What's up, innovators and kingdom builders? You're listening to the Hype Pod, real conversations on tech, innovation, and culture trends. Welcome to episode 38. Look at that. I'm like a new man.
I'm impressed. Who are you?
I don't know. If this is your first time listening, though.
Yes. Tell me.
And you don't know it, we believe here at Hype Network, you're one connection away from your breakthrough.
My goodness.
You need to join Hype membership.
For sure.
Can you tell the people about Hype membership?
I can tell about Hype membership. Hype membership is your I would say your hack to furthering inspiration, innovation, and development of your company, your business through an integration of relationships. This is the idea of Hype membership: is how do I get an investment into my world by exposure to a wider network, people at different levels. I would say people at different stages of building a company, but yet I get to have not just a mentoring, but I get to have a relationship conversation. And, you go through life at the speed of your relationships. And so I think that's what Hype membership is at its core. It's membership, mentorship, but it's also connection through relationship. And it's valuable.
Yeah. And if you like the content here on Hype Podcast, we have a lot of unreleased content that's only available to people.
That's right.
With Hype membership.
That's right.
If that interests you, feel free to sign up, and then also follow us at Hype Network on our socials. We're releasing a lot of content there as well.
We are.
And just on that topic of connections, we're actually going to be chatting about founder mode. I don't know if you've been following this on Twitter.
I haven't.
Oh, okay, great. We're going to talk about that. But before we get into that,
yes,
you just got back from Frankfurt.
Yes. What a launch.
If you were not following Pastor Adam on Instagram, you got to follow it. It looked like, I was like, are we opening our own church, or did you just go visit a mega church there? I really looked like an established, the amount of people. Tell us about it.
Yeah, I mean, it was amazing. A couple of people have asked me, did it exceed my expectations? I think in some aspects, yes. The reality of seeing 1,046 people at a launch was in the US, that would be a massive launch. Yeah. But to do that in Germany, to do that in Europe, a mega church in Europe is 300 people.
Wow.
So on a launch Sunday to have over 1,000 people. Yet at the same time, when Pastor Henok, Pastor Davide, and I were really planning Frankfurt, we kind of figured, hey, if we do this really well with all our knowledge and what we've learned over launching, 10 locations, there's no reason why we can't have 1,000 people at the launch. And so that kind of just set the trajectory on how we built where we should have worship nights and how many team we should have by this stage. And really, I think it kind of met the expectation because we set the expectation at 1,000. But it was certainly amazing to see it come together. We had 2 services. We booked the biggest theater we could, 500 seat. And we maxed them out both times. And it was special. It was amazing. It was chaos. It was absolute chaos.
Yeah.
I mean, what you don't see on the Instagram photos and stuff like that. I mean, what you see is just a roaring crowd. What you don't see is that at night they didn't let. We're in a theater, but they wouldn't let us use the projector.
Oh.
So we ran no projection. No.
For all of it.
Yes.
Wow.
Just literally we had the curtains closed. But I think people thought we were just super cool. That we didn't need projection.
It was all part of the plan, right?
Exactly. But we also got a media write-up, in this paper that is generally kind of critical of the church. But this write-up that we got was entirely positive, which has never been seen before. This is viewed over, I think, 500,000 evangelicals and different people of the church around Germany. And, it's amazing. It's been great. The team did marvelously. And as I was saying before, what you don't see on the posts is the chaos, of a team doing that scale of church for the first time.
Right.
And I think at one point, the team just completely forgot to hand out offering buckets, and things like that.
Yeah.
It was chaos, but God was glorified.
Yeah.
And they're building now.
Yeah, and I think the best way to do it is to get thrown in the fire early, right? Like if you're a team building, you want it to be that way the first time, and you're gonna learn that way, right?
Look, I prepared them. I prepared the team well. I said, hey team, guess what? I said tomorrow, expect to be exhausted. Expect to be physically exhausted, like you just ran a marathon.
Yeah.
And the reason I say that is because we're gonna win today, but we're still gonna be tired. Like if you go into battle, both boxers fight and both are tired, but one wins.
Yeah.
The one who wins is just as tired, but they're energized from the win. And I said, that's the attitude when you're building the church. Do not be confused if you're exhausted. This is battle, but we win.
Yeah.
And so that was a really good framework for them to, even take the day off, and half of the team slept all day. But,
Did they have some of the team from Mountain View go to kind of give them some?
We had a couple of the worship team go.
Okay, cool, yeah.
So we had Paola and Noble go out,
Okay, cool.
which is a gift to end the launch. And
I was gonna say you need that team that's done it before to kind of give you some like, I don't know if it's confidence. I think going into that, he's like, some of the tricks of the
we
trade.
stacked it. We stacked it with Paola and Noble from Mountain View. We had a couple of the team from our Italy campuses.
Okay, cool, yeah, nice.
Who went out there, and we just had a bunch of London. We had Kingdom Builders come from other locations. It was a real family affair. It was amazing to see the buy-in from around the globe on us celebrating the launch. Yeah. And so we had just over 1,000 people at the launch, which was amazing. Then this last Sunday, we went down to our regular room, which was 300 people, and we maxed that out, which is really healthy. So now we're thinking about how do we either double up services or what, but I think that is that's healthy to now start building with around 300 people.
That's amazing. God's good. That's incredible. All right, and before we go into that, we have one more topic because we haven't chatted about it, the debate.
Oh, yes.
What did you think actually, what was your expectations going in with Kamala versus Trump? And then what did you think after? We don't have to get into like the issues or anything, but just how the debate went for you.
Look, I'll be honest with you. I think Trump had everything to lose and Kamala had everything to win. And I think all she had to do was come out and be coherent, and she was already going to be way better than what's previously been presented. And I think she did that. Yeah. I think she honestly won the debate. I think Donald Trump didn't do anything different to what he's done in the past. Actually, I think, let me take that back. I think he was more well-behaved than he'd ever been.
Oh, really? I took away, at least compared to, maybe he wasn't put in threat with Biden or the previous debate.
Right.
But like, he got more frazzled than I thought I would expected him to get frazzled.
Sure.
Yeah, but it was unfair. He was on the panel. It felt like a 3v1.
Yeah,
it was
I don't know different. If I didn't see frazzled. I honestly didn't see that. I think I saw measured. It definitely felt outnumbered.
Yeah, definitely outnumbered.
Like I think everyone, even Democrats, like, that would have been tough. Even the way they directed questions was so, I don't know, it was just kind of offensive. But I think that set Kamala up just to be a little bit. She played the Donald Trump card. She talked over the top. Yeah. She did the slight comments in the background, which forced him to play her own game back that she's played in the past. Yeah. Look, I think it was a bit of a mess. I think what I don't agree with, I think Donald Trump should do another debate. I think they should do more. Yeah, definitely. But maybe with a Fox.
Yeah, that's only fair. It really is only fair. I mean, it'd be nice to have some neutral area, but I don't even know if that exists. But it'd be nice. Yeah, it doesn't exist.
No, I don't think it was a win for the Trump campaign. Yeah. But also, I think just letting Kamala be really Kamala right now. Yeah. If it did anything, if it gave her the confidence to start being herself and speaking outside of a script, right? That's the best thing for the Republican Party. Yeah. Yeah. Because every time she does that, it's terrible.
Yeah. She is the definition of a politician. They give her the answers, give her exactly what to say, and she says it well.
Yeah, and she was a defense attorney.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you give her a closing argument, she can deliver that line. Yeah. And I think it was very scripted. Have you seen the things where they said she's wearing those earrings, the earpiece earrings? Yeah, I saw that. Yeah. That shouldn't be allowed.
Yeah, I think that was debunked, but yes,
Are you sure?
Yeah, that's at least.
Are you sure?
Yeah, on Twitter, you see both sides, but
you do. You do.
But if anybody doesn't know, there was a picture of, I think they have microphone earrings.
They're a specific earring that's a microphone earring.
I mean, they looked exactly like the ones that were released. So if you go on Twitter and you want to look it up, it looks exactly right. But then there is another brand that's there, and so I feel like if they wanted to do it, they would do it where you couldn't see it at all. I mean, they have a lot of people.
I think that's the best way to do it without seeing it at all.
It's just the earrings.
Yeah.
But I mean, you could just create one that doesn't look like the public selling one.
Got you.
Yeah. But maybe they didn't have time. They just switched, candidates.
Exactly,
yeah, they don't have that much time.
They don't have time to go in the war room and start getting technical. Come on.
But yeah, I was curious. I thought it was an interesting debate, but I do hope they do more. I think the one question I had for you is like, do you think it's to Trump's detriment that he's such a gunslinger that he was willing to take that debate on those grounds, on those terms? He could have just held out, right? Like he could have just said, we're going to only do it on Fox. We're only going to do it, under my terms. But he's just such a non-politician where he's like, I'm just going to go and speak.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I just think that they underestimated her ability to speak. I think they underestimated, because they've only seen cackling Kamala up until now. Like, literally, like, all you've ever seen of her is very ambiguous mumbo jumbo. Right. Like, every time she's, it's the same sentence that she's repeated everywhere. What was, what will be, whatever. Right. It's like very philosophically weird about pineapples falling from a tree and stuff like that. So I think they went in going, oh, this is what we're going to get. Right. I think it took them by surprise that she could be coherent. like a normal human being.
Yeah.
I don't think we're even got a high bar right now.
Yeah, it's really sad.
It's so sad. Like, I mean, you think of half of the people who you work with are actually way more coherent in a conversation than both candidates right now. Even Donald Trump.
Right.
I don't even think Donald Trump is the most coherent representation of what a leader looks like in our country.
Yeah, definitely.
I think even getting through a sentence without going into his Trumpisms, it's like, oh man, just all right, stop telling us how great you are. Like, let's just get to the point and be punctual. So I don't know, but I think what we got to see is this is a formidable opponent at the moment.
Yeah.
Because all people need to know from, if you're a hardline Democrat, all you need to see is, oh, they can construct a sentence. Great.
Yeah. I think it's going to be really interesting to see. There's a lot of, if you're also on conspiracy Twitter theories, you know, there's a lot of stuff going where all of her rallies, all of the stuff that the polls are pushing, it's very much, you know, fabricated to get her numbers up. So now where it becomes groupthink and people start thinking, oh, maybe she is actually a good candidate. And the numbers are looking very close now. So it's going to be,
it's going to be a tight race.
It's going to be a very tight race. It was looking like a landslide going in, but
yeah, I think it was definitely going to be a landslide with Biden.
Yeah.
But they did pull a hot swap, and at the end of the day, I mean, it's got to come down to America moving away from this party line thinking and think really objectively around policies. What kind of America do you want to live in? And if I think honestly, if people decide, if the mass populace of voters, if it's a fair election, okay, if it is a fair election, and we go down the way that the election is won and lost in regions. If each city comes together and they're like, hey, we don't care about invaders coming through our border, we don't care about these things, all we care about is niceness or the first female president. Like, that should not be a sentence. It's not like the president, I don't believe, should be a representation of a diversity thing. Like, oh, we've never had a female president. Let's see how that goes. No, that really doesn't make sense to an argument. What it should be is, hey, those policies and that type of thinking is the America I want to live in, regardless of what they dress like, look like, act like, sound like. And unfortunately, what matters to me doesn't always matter to everybody. Okay, and I'm aware of that. So I just think that's, unfortunately, whether we like it or not, the America we are going to live in is what everyone chooses. Yeah,
I agree. And I actually think that segues really nicely into what I wanted to chat about on this podcast. And it's called this thing called founder mode. And so Paul Graham,
talk to me about that.
Yeah, so Paul Graham, he's a founder of Y Combinator. He made a blog post about these two distinct modes, founder mode and manager mode. And so essentially founder mode is the visionary. I think you would consider them the visionary. They're the ones that are, you know, they come up with the idea. They're the ones that are hands-on at some point. But then typical, I think, business savvy or culture would say at some point you then need manager mode. The people that'll come in, they'll hire the right people. The founder will be kind of displaced from like day-to-day kind of operations. And so he, I think, posited both modes and then said that there's some balance that you need to have. Whereas going straight to manager mode, you kind of lose some of the vision and you kind of water down some of the motivation that was started to for like a startup, whatever it was, and you end up kind of maybe dying out. Or you have the visionary that stays on too long and then you just never scale and it kind of dies out, and you need that business operations to really set your company up in the right way. So it's interesting to think about, because you started a church and then you started many other churches after that. So you kind of went from founder mode to manager mode, or maybe you haven't. So I'm curious to see, you know, where you think you are in that cycle, how you started, and then
I think given that description, I'd very much still be in founder mode for sure. I think given that description, I'm just trying to think of CEOs that match the manager mode versus the founder mode. I would say Elon is still founder mode. He's gritty. He's breaking ideals. He's inventing new philosophies around how to start businesses, and he's very aggressive. I think at Vive Church, we're still very much in founder mode. I'm involved at multiple layers. I don't think people realize how flat we are as an organization because I'm touching a lot of things.
Talk about that.
Well, I think a founder mode means a founder is still involved, not just in a finance meeting, but a product meeting and a event meeting, and how does it feel in the event, what slides going up, what songs are we singing on Sunday. That's founder mode. And I think when you progress beyond founder mode, it's like, well, you've got a team that do the song selection. You've got a team that run campus launches. You've got a team. No, I'm still there at the launch. I'm still there in the setup to the launch. I'm still planning every interest meeting, worship night, for us, that's the season that we're in. With being humble, it's because there is a specific way I'm trying to build the church, and even reinvent. So even the way that we're moving as a church is away from a mainstream model of church, because God's spoken to me as about a discipleship model of church, and so that requires me to be founder mode in. Okay.
Can you contrast those two, the mainstream model versus the model that you're trying to do?
Yeah.
For people that maybe aren't a part of the church yet.
Yeah. Okay. Mainstream model church is event-driven church. Okay. So it's like you have a series of events that's driven by a brand. Okay. And so that brand is more of a mega church model where it's like, well, there's that brand of speaker and this style of church, and we do these cool events. And then what you do is you end up marketing to the church. So it's like you market this event. Now, unfortunately, there is a function that drives that style of church. That's not an intentional style of church. It's a forced function of a lack of revelation around the tithe. Okay, so you think about if the church was to tithe, okay, in American church, right now a healthy American church, they would say that up to 20% of the church tithe. Okay. That's meaning they've got the principle of the tithe, they're giving 10th of their income to build the church. They're a contributor. If we take it away from the church, let's call it a potluck, okay? Out of the 100 people that come to the potluck, 20 people bring something, okay? But 100 people eat.
Right.
Okay, so you know how fun that potluck would be. You know what I mean?
Pretty hungry, huh?
That's why when we do a potluck, we get everyone to talk about what they brought.
Yeah.
Why did you bring that?
Right.
And then if someone didn't bring something, it's really awkward. We should do that as a church.
Yeah, we should. That'd be pretty funny.
But that 20% giving doesn't sustain what we need to do. Okay, so it may pay for the electricity, the toilet paper, all the things like that, the mortgage, but it doesn't allow us to put on a conference, which is an acceleration moment in discipleship, or a brotherhood event, which is a deliverance moment for the men or whatever. So that means you have to charge for those extra things.
Got it.
Rather than just providing them as a part of the journey of discipleship.
Yep.
We have to charge, and the moment we have to charge, we have to make it an event, and then we have to market to the event.
Got it.
Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
So the church becomes an event-driven marketing machine to its own people.
Right. And that's not to their fault. It just kind of...
No, it's a byproduct of poor revelation
Right.
around tithing.
Got it.
So if you go to South America,
Makes sense, yeah.
think about the mentality of a South American Christian. This is not exactly right, but in South American churches, about 80 to 90% of the church tithe. And the reason they tithe is because tithing is a superstition. It's like a Catholic,
right.
Cross, north, south, east, west kind of thing.
That's how I grew
like,
up.
but it's like, oh my gosh, if I don't tithe, I don't want to risk my business going bankrupt or my family losing a leg or whatever it is. Like, I got to tithe. In America, our mentality around tithe is completely different. Most Americans see tithe as a Christian tax. And so because we're wired to avoid tax, when I go on vacation, so does my tithe. Because, well, I wasn't there.
Right.
What am I paying for? And, I didn't eat.
Right.
All those kinds of things, even though seeing it as a principle of honoring the Lord for my income, it's seeing as a payment for going. So we've got these battles, right? But if we did the biblical model of Christianity and we discipled our people and people actually were obedient to Christ, saying, hey, the Lord commands us two things: get baptized and tithe. Honor the Lord with the first 10th of your income. Those two fundamental things would actually create, even if it changed a church from somewhere under 20%, say up to 50%, we can move away from being event-driven church, whereas events that are still necessary, or classes or courses or groups or the tools, would actually be prescriptive for the church discipleship on how do I take someone from where they are to where they're going to be.
Yeah.
Our American image of discipleship, if I said, are you being discipled? You're going to go in your brain. Well, when was the last time I sat down one-on-one in a cafe with a pastor?
Yeah.
No, that's not discipleship. Okay, think in life. When do you have a one-on-one meeting? I'll tell you, it's with your doctor, it's with your dentist, it's probably with your chiropractor, your accountant, or your oversight.
Yeah.
And none of those you look forward to. Okay? Because they're adjustments.
Yeah.
They're
right.
check-ins. They're how's your performance? How's your health? Those are necessary, and we should have them, but they're not a cute coffee date. That's like, no one ever says, oh, I get to go to see my dentist today. No, I'm going to go because I need to. And I think we need those health checkups. But where discipleship happens best is actually in a body format.
Oh, interesting.
So let's think about group connections. The gym, when you go to a brunch, when you go to an event. These things become the very model for this. So it's rewiring the way we do it. And how do we provide this under a discipleship course for the church? But it takes a major altar moment.
Right.
Whereas the body of the church, we all agree to bring a dish to the potluck.
Right. So then would you say that you scaled back, or you thought about when you were building the church, it's like first principles, and it was the first thing that you have to do is that discipline of tithe. Like that is like core to what it means to be a Christian. And
I would say baptism and tithing.
Yeah. But
to be a Christian means identify with Christ, so I get baptized.
Yeah.
Baptism doesn't make you a Christian; it's identity of a Christian. So Jesus said, "Be baptized like I was baptized."
Right.
Okay, so I'm identifying with Christ. I'm going to be public with my faith. Now I'm going to be obedient. He says, "Why do you call me Lord, Lord, but don't do what I say?" And then in Malachi he says, "You're robbing me. You're a thief, because I've taught you about the tithes, but you're holding it back."
Right.
So I think to be a Christian is to identify and do, to identify with Christ and do what he says. As hard as it is, okay, you look at the Great Commission. It's interesting because as the Great Commission, he talks about go into all the world and make disciples, right? But it says, it leads into that sentence that Jesus gives the disciples by saying, they went up to the mountain where he directed them. Okay, so they were following where he said, even though some doubted. And it's even in their doubts, they were still obedient. Even though they didn't have the full revelation or understanding of what Jesus was building, they still were obedient. I think what we've got is we've got a problem in the church that people use the excuse or pretend to not know enough to get them out of giving and the hard things. Yeah. And that's just not a Christian.
Yeah.
It just really isn't.
Can I actually ask you something? Something that I've seen like throughout churches is that sometimes it feels like people think that the pastor is the one asking for the money.
Yeah.
And it's that
they think the church came up with the tithe.
Right. It's like that is the person that you're answering to. So then it becomes, oh, I'm saying no to the pastor, or I'm getting angry because the pastor is coming to me for money.
Yeah.
But it's really, it's God coming to you. And then the pastor is just the messenger. Do you think it's maybe I don't know if it's like the way that we look at pastors, and maybe it's like we put them.
Well, I think it's because the pastor is the one that does the talking.
Yeah, right.
So the pastor is presenting the hard thing. I think it's the same as like, oh, my doctor wants me to take these tablets. Well, why?
Yeah, your body.
Because the doctor's like, this is what's going to make you healthy.
Right.
The doctor's like, well, I'd love to be your friend. I'd love that.
Right.
And I'll just say, have a cigar and a whiskey every day.
Yeah.
But I know that's not what's healthy for you, so let me give you some pills.
Yeah.
Right? Even though you don't like me.
Yeah.
That's the position of the pastor. And I think most people, I don't know where it came from, where it's like, I don't want the pastor to have money or something like that.
Right.
Or as if the pastor's taking the tithe.
Right.
Maybe what helps is more transparency on what it costs to run a church.
Yeah.
I think in California, just take your own costs, of your own home, your own electricity, how outrageous that is, and multiply that by 80,000 square feet. There's I think normal, wise people can understand the cost on what it is to run a church. But I think, yes, you're right. A lot of people go, oh, this is like some new modern church idea on to get money.
Right.
No, it's it's God's plan for there to be food in his house. And our job is to spiritually feed the church. But there is a practical application to ensure that there's food in the house. Yeah. I keep coming back to the potluck dinner, because I didn't really do potluck dinners until I came to America. But it was like an eye-opening moment, because every time you have a potluck, people bring something that they're invested in. They're like, oh man, I have this rice pilaf because this is my heritage and this is what we do with it. And then the next person goes, well, I brought like, butter chicken pizza, and it's a modern take on Indian food, whatever. Right. And everyone's super proud. Yeah. And how awkward would it be to go, I just didn't feel like bringing anything. Right. But I'm still hungry, so I'm going to eat.
Yeah, and you got to ask, why wouldn't you? Like the people that did, it was an act of love for the people that you're going to commune with.
I can tell you why, because you're either a freeloader or a thief. It's one of the two.
Right.
It's like, I'm a freeloader. Right. I'm just going to consume. Or I'm a thief. I want to steal. Because I know what I'm meant to do, but I just want to take. Right. And this is why it's problematic, is because if people stay in that consumer lane of like consuming but not contributing, they end up being critics. Like they're the people at the potluck saying, hey, you brought rice pilaf last time.
Right.
Do you want to add some pine nuts in this? You want to try something different?
I've had that before.
Yeah, I've had that before. It's like, okay, bro. What did you bring?
Or Chris, a little bit more salt next time. Yeah. But didn't bring anything else.
Exactly. You brought donuts last time, but like that's the problem. We become critical. And that's where the church gets stagnant, because instead of a bunch of contributors, you have critics who then start to try and poke holes at everything.
Yeah, and you can be critical because you haven't, and sometimes it's because you haven't put the work in to know what goes into doing it, or because you're not the one providing it, right? It's easy to be critical when you're not, but you can have some grace and understanding if you've been on that journey too.
Well,
right?
I've never seen a contributor be critical.
Right.
Never.
Yeah, or if they're critical, it's very constructive.
Well, yeah, but I wouldn't say I wouldn't say it's like a critic. What I'm talking about with critical is I'm talking about we should do this or that you should do this.
Right.
Every contributor understands the heart behind it and they're appreciative of it because they're invested in it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
It's like everyone mocks Tesla.
Yeah.
I guarantee they don't have stock.
Yeah.
Everyone who mocks Twitter doesn't have stock.
Very good point. Oh.
But the moment you have stock, you're not talking bad about that product. You're promoting that product because you're invested in it.
Yeah. So I actually want to touch on something there. So you touched on this idea of transparency.
Yeah.
And it kind of goes to that, the potluck example of, when we get there, maybe everybody should kind of go around. So why don't you think it is that churches are more transparent when it comes to finances? Obviously, it's, you're running it as a business. Businesses aren't fully transparent to some degree about their finances, but do you feel like churches should be different, or where do you think that?
I think churches are. I'm not sure. I mean, not to the public, but to the members.
Yeah.
So
which is probably the only people that you should be transparent to, really.
Yeah. I mean, the world doesn't get to poke holes on where you send money.
Right.
And the critics who aren't giving think you should send it all to India, or something like that. Not paying staff and salaries, and because if we just open it up to the wider public, then people start saying, well, do staff really need health benefits or whatever?
Right.
It's like, yeah, they've got to live.
Right.
I mean, yes.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, every church I know of is very transparent to their members. So members have access at any time to just call the church and get the P&Ls. We do it once a year at Vision. We do an open forum on, hey, this is where we're at. This is where we've spent money. This is where we've allocated money. This is how we went with the vision, and presenting a report, annual report. I think for me, it's always something I'm more than open to, because I think it is a testament to how much miraculously we do with the little that we get.
Right.
But I haven't seen a church that I know of who is hiding finances, not from members.
Right. I think you usually hear it after the fact. You've heard it with like Hillsong, and then you kind of, after the scandal comes out, then you kind of go back and you hear all these things. But it feels like if you kind of need it for the checks and balances, right? Like you kind of need it because, like, anybody can get corrupted, right? Like if you kind of just allow yourself to remain in isolation. But if you have these checks and balances with your members, the people that are kind of a part of it, it just makes sense.
I think that's important on the leadership side of things. I think on the giver side of things, you can't let that be an excuse not to give. If you've seen Hillsong go, oh, well, see, I told you they came out and they're corrupt. Yeah. Well, guess what? You're still giving as righteous. Your giving is still righteous, because
and that's why it's the first principle, right?
Yeah, it's the first principle. You gave. It's not about where that dollar went. It's the fact that you gave it. Now, they're judged. The leadership of that church will be judged heavily on what they do with it. But guess what? You're not the judge. You're the giver. And so you still get to honor the Lord. But if you don't give because you've got some moral dilemma that you're making up as an excuse, you get judged.
Yeah, no, you can't. That's a very, very, very good point. You cannot stop your giving because you think, oh, that person's not going to do right by my money, so now I have an excuse to
I feel like it should go here, or I want it to go there.
Right.
I've had people in the past say, hey, I'm going to give this so it goes to that. I'm like, cool, okay. I can't guarantee you it goes to toilet paper or it goes to that person's salary.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? It's going into the operations of the church. It's not like I'm going to give that particular person a $10,000 bonus because you wanted your giving to go to that favorite person. That doesn't work like that.
Right.
What we need to do is we need to provide. And I think it gets, I'm more than open on being how transparent, like, the cost of running a church is. So, if you were to host a potluck, let's go back to the potluck thing, and it's not just bringing the food, you provide the toilet paper. And I keep saying toilet paper, we've got a line item for toilet paper that people are messy and they need to wipe.
Right.
And that costs money to do that.
Right.
I can't say do it at home on your own dime.
Yeah.
We're providing that. So there are really practical things that go into building the church. And so it astounds me too that people can come, love it, and go, this is my church, but I'm not going.
Yeah. Actually, just to stay on this topic, Pastor Kira gave a great message last week about
that was
marriage
good.
and finances. It was fantastic. And I was thinking about that while I was listening to the message about it kind of feels like it comes down to communication. It kind of,
Yeah.
even within marriage, everything comes down to communication. You got to make sure the other party knows exactly what it is you're doing. And it kind of feels like you're on your topic of like the potluck and showing people how much it costs to run a church.
Yeah.
Maybe that is the thing that kind of opens people's eyes. And it's like, oh, really, this is how much work, not just the cost, but
Yeah.
the work it takes. Because sometimes, the work is done behind the scenes and it's not seen by anybody.
Yeah.
And then some people just think, oh, that just happens. But it
I
doesn't
mean,
really
if you
happen.
think that, then you're pretty stupid.
Yeah.
I just got to be blunt.
Yeah,
like
sure.
if that's the thing that gets you to tithing, well then you're missing the principle of the tithe.
Yeah.
That's my problem.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that we can't be that transparent and just talk practically. Hey, here's how much it costs to run air conditioning. Here's how much. But if that's the reason you give, well then it's like you're chipping in.
Right.
But Jesus said, let's not do that. Let's get a principle of the 10th, so that whether you earn $1 million a year or you earn $10,000 a year, a tenth is a tenth. We have equal share in this thing.
Right. Okay, so then actually, this is the point I was trying to get at. I agree with that. The 10th is your discipline and your
It's an
duty.
equal share.
Right?
Yep.
But I think if you were to enlighten people on that side of things, maybe that's how you get that giving above that and above and beyond. When now this is what it really takes. Or maybe it's not just my money, maybe it's time now. Now I need to serve. This is where it's lacking, or this is where I need to get involved in.
Oh yeah, I mean it
Yeah.
bridges well beyond giving.
Yeah.
Like it's in serving, talent, all these areas that the church has these resources.
Yeah.
But how the church is going to expand is from the people in the church, which is the
Exactly.
church.
Yeah.
Giving of those talent,
Yeah.
that intellect, that wisdom.
Yeah.
There's other gifts outside of money, but once you get money, you get everything else.
Interesting.
Because the Bible says that where your treasure is, your heart will be also. So if I get the heart, then what flows from the heart is
Yeah.
all these other areas, as well as in the church.
Yeah, I actually want to ask you about something, because one of the things that when I first joined Vive that I took away was it was never just come to the church, take from the church, and leave. It was always an ask of what can you give to the church. And this thing I probably loved most about Vive when I first got here was that you would never just be able to come to service and just leave.
No way.
Like there was such intention about making sure that you came to church and that you gave to the church, not just financially, but your time and serving.
Yeah.
And that was really powerful. Was that something that you were very intentional about when you were in your founder mode, I guess, not which you're still in?
Yeah, I
About
mean,
making sure that is part of the core culture.
I think I've got a different perspective of what Americans viewed the church. They viewed the church as a service or an event.
Yeah.
You turn up to service. But I see the church as life. We do this a lot. So there's an old school thing we used to do in Pentecostal church called fellowship lunch, where after service, you'd hang around for lunch. You get the mums in the church, they'd be cooking and you'd hang out and you'd fellowship. Well, sometimes the danger of modern church is we're so streamlined. It's like get into the parking lot early to get a parking space and get out before everyone else queues you up for 2 minutes. You know what I mean, or whatever. But we're not hanging. We're not talking. We're not doing relational fellowship. Like fellowship is a kingdom word. It's like we're communicating, we're talking, we're having people know each other's lives and celebrating with each other. If your focus is, let me get into the service and get out, get in last, get in out first, you are missing so much of what the church is. Okay, you're treating it like a cinema show or something like that.
Right.
Or I was saying the other Sunday, it's like, because there's all these people that started to leave. And I'm like, hang on, guys, the only time that I've seen anybody leave a football game is when their team's losing. Right. And we're not losing. We're winning. Well said, yeah. You know what I mean? So why would you skip out on the moment of altar or the moment of ministry or just even high-fiving each other? Man, wasn't that a great service? Let's talk. What's happening in your life? Right. It just means we've got selfish Christians. If your focus is to get out, you're thinking of self. And I'm really fed up with self-oriented Christians. I want us to be community-driven Christians. I want us to be focused on how do I bless each other? How do I build? So if we're talking about founder mode, I think every Christian should be in a founder mode. I think they should treat their Christianity like a founder mode. I'm building something here. I'm a part of something. Because founder mode CEOs produce founder mode organizations where everyone is in the war room. Everyone's gritty. And the moment you go to management mode, there's people that are disconnected or they're doing 9 to 5. They're checking in, checking out. And that's the moment where people start looking at their exit ramp.
How did you balance that? Because I feel like as I was looking into this, I was reading the blog posts, it was finding that balance. And everything you've talked about is you found that balance. Because to be able to scale to the point where you scaled Vive Church, you do need some semblance of manager mode. You can't just have everything be done by you or by yourself, right? So how did you find that balance of making sure the right people were in the right place to do the manager stuff or maybe the operational stuff, but then still have your vision kind of be there throughout, or have your hands on the right areas where they were supposed to be?
Yeah, I think for me, it's. I don't think I have any managers.
Okay, cool.
In Vive.
Talk about that. Yeah.
I think I give everybody the ability to be a founder within that area, like to be at least an engineer, a cultural engineer on what would it look like. So I'm not telling my youth pastors to paint by numbers. I'm dreaming with them. I'm drawing out their vision, and even team captains. Like, how can we do this? What would it look like? And I'm trying to draw out of them their founder mode for that
really
department.
good.
Not like, hey, just do A, B, and C. Just make sure it's good.
Yeah.
No, I'm like, let's get invested. You know what I mean?
Do you have conflicts then of the vision not being the one that you set out for the church at large, when because like you think of a founder mode as a visionary, where maybe their vision for a church or their vision for that function ends up diverting from yours?
Well, this is the difference between vision and culture.
Okay.
So it's the CEO's job to paint a vision, but if you build the culture strong enough, everybody in that culture will have a similar vision. They'll have a vision that is bigger, a vision that isn't safe or small, a vision of excellence, for instance. So if our culture is excellence, then whatever vision will replicate excellence. Okay, so let me give you a classic example. Okay, I say, hey, Arun, you and Shilps have been coming Vive for a long time. I see you kind of dip out straight after service. I'd love to get you on team. And you're like, sweet, man, what do you want us to do? I'm like, I'd love you to set up coffee. Can you be in charge of the coffee? I'm trying to go super small church.
Yeah.
Set up the coffee station.
Yeah.
And you could ask me, what do you want me to do? Now, a manager would go, hey, could you put coffee and tea, maybe set up a table, make it accessible for everybody. And guess what? You'll go and do exactly that.
Right.
But if you say, hey, what do you want me to do? I'm like, well, what do you think? And you go, well, I know at Vive we do everything with excellence. So what if we don't just have a coffee table? What if we have a coffee experience? What if we have like different, what if we pour over and espresso and some tea, and maybe we do a tablecloth and a little candle, and what if we actually have someone there talking about where the beans are from and how that impacts this region, and we do like, farmer friendly kind of coffee because that's really in line with the mission or whatever. All of a sudden, because of the culture of excellence that you're already in, I've allowed you to be a visionary. So now you've got a better experience. You've been a founder now. Not a manager.
Interesting. That allows for a lot of ownership. Like, you can transfer a lot of ownership over.
Yes.
So how did you then do that? Because now it seems like the pressure is on you to pick the right people.
For sure. But I think I think a healthy application would be manager or owner mode.
Okay.
That's biblical.
All right, let's talk about it. Because actually, on this topic, because founder mode has been getting memed all across like Twitter and everything.
Sure.
I think it's because this is not some new kind of concept or anything like that, but somebody writes an article and now you have two different names and people have to fit their way in, kind of like astrology signs or something.
Sure.
So let's just talk about it. Yeah, it's interesting. Owner mode. Let's go.
Well, I think that's what the Bible says is owner mode or manager mode. And he talks about the manager or the owner. There's a mentality to go, am I just going to manage what God's given me, or am I going to own the kingdom and I'm going to bring increase? Okay, so the manager just keeps and manages and returns what they were given. It's like the parable of talents. The manager buried it and returned it. Okay, the owner, he took it, he multiplied it, and he gave back more because he's in that founder mode. I'm going to increase what I'm given. I think that's in the church, right? If I give you a task, I'm looking for people who aren't just going to give me back the task, but who's going to grow that thing. And so I'm looking for leaders who can grow the area, not just manage or maintain.
Yeah. Okay, then that's actually really interesting when you talk about in the church when you're managing.
But what a great compliment, right?
Yeah, that really is.
Like a compliment is to expect more from you.
Yeah.
If I said, hey, Arun, here's the podcast, I'm not looking for us to grow any subscribers.
Right. Let's just keep it the way it is.
Let's keep it small.
Yeah.
No, that would be a poor expectation on your skill set.
Right.
But because you're a skilled person, you kind of want a target.
Yeah.
Like compliment me with growth expectation.
Right.
That's a compliment.
Do you find it hard for some people to then take that, or like they see this responsibility of something that's so important to build for God's kingdom, where they're saying, I just don't want to mess it up. I just want to keep the path going as it is. And how do you get them to break out and say, no, you can make mistakes. You can kind of try and achieve something that may fail. It possibly may fail. You may scale so hard that it may fail, but you kind of balance it in that way.
So what you do there is you frame the kind of mistakes that are acceptable. Okay, because there are some mistakes that are unacceptable. Mistakes made from laziness, mistakes made from oversleeping and not turning up on time.
Right.
Those kind of mistakes, or not learning the lyrics for a worship team member or the chords. That's not acceptable mistakes because that was poor diligence. But the mistakes on the other side of stepping out and trying something, man, they're more than acceptable. And that's the culture that you want to create.
Right.
It's like, man, let's try something. Let's do something that's bold and outrageous and, like a billboard. and maybe it didn't work. Nobody came.
Right.
Well, at least we tried it.
Right.
You know what I mean? But it wasn't from poor management of time or poor ethics.
Yeah. So there's an example that was given that I was reading online. It was Elizabeth Holmes, Theranos. Have you seen?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So she was the example of a visionary that went too far. Like she was the one that never got the manager mode or never, kind of
Well, she didn't deliver.
Right. But she was so locked into the
Compelling,
vision.
yeah.
Right. And she was compelling and she wanted that vision to be seen, that she did everything to get to that vision, where she kind of lost. You need to go through certain steps to be able to get there.
Yeah.
And maybe it's slower and steady.
Yeah.
But so
Well, it lacked the element of substance. Substance is actually what makes what you say have weight and believable. Okay, so over the years, you have to build a track record of substance, of delivery. Okay, so what makes a valuable founder is someone who's delivered on different levels and go, well, man, if he's delivered 10 years each year in a row, man, I'm going to invest more. I think that was a shame on the investors because they invested in someone who never delivered anything. And so what's the substance behind what they say? Every word has weight depending on what you've done, okay? And so I just know this because of being who I am as the lead pastor in the church. If I say something compared to maybe even my youth pastor, Ben, it comes with different weight, okay? Namely because of the position and the leadership and the substance of what we've brought in the past, okay? And he's a great guy of great character and great substance, but he's growing in that. And you add to that. I go all the way back to year one when we launched a vision, and no one believed it. Why should they? We hadn't done anything yet. It was just a really cool idea. But the few who were the progressive, risky, investors of the church, talking Vance and Kim and different people like that, Carly, these guys were so radically invested that they saw it, okay, even before we had any proof in the pudding. So most people aren't like that, though. I think sometimes you have to have more substance before it makes it believable.
That's a very interesting point about being the visionary that can kind of, cast that vision on people that can kind of take it in. Or do you need to find the people that are kind of like the risk takers that are more receptive? Or it's like, do you feel like you can kind of...
I think you have to find both for different seasons. I mean, let's think of the greatest founder that we know in our generation, Elon Musk. I mean, if he's to launch anything now, no one's doubting. We're just like in, you know what I mean? It could be, replacement eyeballs. Mechanic eyeballs are going to be better.
Wait, that's funny. I think that was a thing I just saw. I think that's actually coming out.
But it doesn't matter. But even back, like PayPal days when he's launching the roads to the Tesla, skeptics. Everyone was skeptical because why? He hadn't really built much yet. But it's the same guy. And so because he's delivered on SpaceX, on
I like
Tesla.
the way that you and Pastor Vance talked about it last week or a few last podcasts about that kind of, the future is lonely, right?
Yes.
It's very lonely in the future, but you need somebody that's willing to kind of be in that space.
You've got to forge a path for people to see the path. And so when you're hacking the way through the forest, there's no one up there swinging the machete with you. You're the one taking the hits, but everyone gets to follow afterwards.
Can you actually, maybe this might be really useful for people out there that have been, maybe they're in that visionary mode. So the visionary mode is very hard. It's not the place that you want to be. It's like, it kind of goes to the main character thing. It's like, you're not the main character. You don't want to be the main character. You think you want to be the main character, but you really don't.
You really don't.
But like, as you've gone through this season, you've had many visions that you've kind of gone through, vision seasons that you've gone through. There's obviously been some that haven't hit, like you expected. Have you ever had to fight maybe that internal talk of maybe that's not the vision that's for the church, or maybe I need to scale back?
Every time.
Talk about it. How do you get through that? Because that seems so difficult. Failure seems like that would be the kibosh on any future vision almost.
I think it's the way you process failure.
Okay.
Is failure the defeat or is failure a lesson? And there's great learning in failure on what failed. Was it me? Was it my communication? Was it the speed? Or was it the economy? What was the factors that go into failure? And if I can analyze failure like a lesson, I'm actually going to draw the elements needed to be better as a leader. And so I think for me, for sure, there has been, I think even in different levels of failure where maybe we didn't get the vision funds in all the way or something like that, I could definitely look at it and go, oh man, people aren't with me.
Right.
I have maybe founder mode is not like manager mode would probably be let's just call it raps. Let's just manage this down. A founder mode is like, okay, cool, what do I have to do better? And it's almost like you'll know if you're a founder if you find a brick wall and you take a run up.
Yep.
Not like analyze the wall.
Mm-hmm.
Sit there describing all the wall probabilities of
Right,
penetrating the wall.
Right.
No, just take a big run up and go, what speed do I need to pick up to
Right.
get this through?
Right.
And I think that's probably the differential between a founder and a manager, an owner and a manager.
Yeah. No, I think that's exactly the way it's described, is that moment. And then he talks about Airbnb as one of his case examples, and how the traditional manager mode would have said, kind of find out that layer below you, let them kind of scale the business out.
Right.
But really what it was is that you need to be the one that's moving quickly. You need to be the that's running up the wall, making those mistakes, running again, going for it. Because you need to be able to, if you're breaking ground, not if you're doing the same thing everybody's been doing. If you're breaking ground, you need to be almost breaking yourself a little bit in these kind of attempts that you make.
Yeah, okay. I'll give you Braveheart as an analogy.
Yeah.
A founder leads from the front, a manager leads from the back. So when William Wallace, he went into battle. He led them into battle. He charged the battlefield. This is a founder starting a new movement, rallying troops. But the English, I can't remember the name of the English guy, but he would sit at the back of the battle, never get his hands dirty, but sending in the troops and sending in. That's a manager.
Yeah.
I'll lead from the back. I'll lead from comfort. I'll allocate things. I'll set tasks. I'll set these things. That's a manager. A manager leads from comfort, from the back, and what makes them protected. A founder puts everything on the line.
Yeah. And I think that's the other distinction, is the manager isn't pushing the vision.
No.
The manager is just pushing the tasks.
Yes,
really,
for
right?
sure.
And so if you go into manager mode too much, and I think this is the biggest thing that people are talking about, is that you lose vision along the way.
Yep.
Right. And you can't lose vision if you want to accomplish what you want to accomplish.
Exactly.
And how did you go through that with Vive Church? And like, how do you see the future if you had to look through the next 10 years? Obviously, you're so hands-on now.
Yeah.
Do you see a future in which, now that you've created these founders?
You're really trying to get stuff out of me under the vision. I can tell.
Before the podcast, he told me no vision. But no vision talk.
No, I can't talk vision yet. We're 4 weeks away from our vision.
You got to be there
at the time of this recording. Yes.
Yeah.
Say the question directly again.
Yes. It's not about vision.
Okay.
So if it did seem like that, it's not about.
Yeah.
But like, in 10 years, if you look forward, at some point you do have to, maybe go, let's call it founder manager mode, where it's like, now it's fully, you can't be at every church launch. Let's say things go well. You can't.
I foresee a day when I have to move into manager mode.
Yeah.
Because then I would lead through the next generation of founders.
Exactly. So do you see a signal or something that you're looking for that would tell you that this is the time?
Yeah, I think for me, I'm definitely setting a goal.
Okay.
A goal from where can I run hard? What can I sprint to? And is that 10 years? Is that 15 years? Is that 20 years? What would be the right time to set this up with a health and an energy that will be only taken over by maybe someone who's half my age, if that makes sense. And so I think it's really at the level where the culture is so strong that we've built up founders within the organization that are continuing the next level of founder mode.
Yeah.
Sure.
I think this was a really good kind of chat about, finding that balance. And I think just from talking to you, it feels like you just found that kind of naturally. It isn't something that you really thought about. Would this come naturally to you? Was it conversations with other people, seeing maybe your mentors kind of do it?
No, I think it was just an essential force function, of starting something, of starting the church. When we started the church, I didn't know anything about like a startup plan. I didn't know I was a founder. I didn't know I was just going to get things started and scale. And so at every stage, looking back, and do I like what we're scaling?
Yeah.
Is this what I want 10 more of, 100 more of? Is this what we like? And making the right iterations so that whatever we grow, we still enjoy and we still like.
Yeah.
And very much scrappy, trying to get things through at every stage to present excellence and present the best we can. But sometimes it's just being the best we've got. Right.
Did you take some of the principles from like Silicon Valley, building a startup, and those business kind of practices to the church, or is this kind of stuff that you've seen from other churches?
I would say for sure, especially like I was talking to this at Hype in London just last week. I sat before them and I was like, because I was talking to British people who approach something like a Hype network or a Hype membership from a different perspective.
Okay.
And I use this example as an Australian coming into the Silicon Valley. I learnt some lessons in Silicon Valley world, the ecosystem of Silicon Valley. I learned to think bigger. I learned to think faster. I learned to stop limited thinking. Okay, everything's possible. So in Australia, if I had an idea, the first person I tell would be critical. In the Silicon Valley, the first person I tell is celebratory.
Right.
They're like, yeah. But in Australia, it's nah. And so I came from like a very UK British mentality, which is, tall poppy, cut them down, bring them back to reality. You know how hard that's going to be. But in the Silicon Valley, there was an era of optimism.
Right. Problem solving. It's like, oh, cool, that's something we can
Let
solve.
me help. Let's join in.
Yeah.
Wow, what a great problem.
Right.
And I think I was just talking about this in the realm of hype memberships. You could be, if I talk about a membership in the Silicon Valley, people sign up. They're like, man, there's an opportunity for me to scale up and learn from other people. Done. In the UK, it's more like, well, what do I get for my money? And it's like, well, I can piecemeal out every little benefit you get, but you're missing the power component of the potential that comes with being in an orbit of other people, right? So I think it's a different approach in the Silicon Valley that I've learned that I think unlocked for sure this idea of bigness.
Yeah. Have you had an issue now that, the church has kind of gone global, and like we've talked about the different cultures in different parts of the world, translating that, how you build the church here versus how you build the church? Yeah. Have you had any issues with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Any stories you can tell?
I mean, just going into, let's talk about Italy. Okay. So Italy is very much a generation, like a culture where you do what your dad did. Okay. So pioneering something new is different. The way they approach taxes is a very socialist system there. So it's like, I don't want to earn too much because then I pay more tax. And that's like a crazy idea that I want to cap my income because I don't want to go into the next tax bracket. American mentality is, well, let me blow through that tax bracket and figure out how to actually avoid the taxes because I want to earn more. Whereas it's like, oh, I'm happy just to be you go to Italy and you'll see a educated 45-year-old gelato guy. He's working in his parents' gelato store at 45 years old.
He's happy.
Well, that's just what you do.
Yeah.
It's like, well, hang on, bro. Let me get a vision for starting a company or building something. This is not even in the paradigm. And so I think it's now that translates into the church. When we start new initiatives and we want to think bigger, it's met with skepticism and those kinds of things. And it's a different challenge for sure.
You know what? I think that also touches on the founder mode. I think it's that aspect inside of you of wanting to see that. And that's just a problem that you can go solve. And that's why you need to be hands-on in that area, right?
Well, I've always put it this way. Capacity is a measure of complexity. How much complexity can you handle? That's what determines your capacity. So how much capacity do you have? How much capacity do I have? It's how much complexities we can handle. And everything is just a different level of complexity. Some things are more complex and some things are less complex. But what I got to do is, most people see a big problem and they back out. Rather than just analyzing, well, this is complex, but I'm a complex person. So let me start to decomplicate this so that I can actually bring great solutions. And it's not getting emotional. I think as a founder, you can't afford to get emotional in the wrong way. I think you have to be passionate, and so direct your energy and your emotion towards passion, but de-emotionalize the problem solving and make it very analytical. And that's how you actually increase capacity to expand.
And I think I want to just make sure to clear up any confusion, because this is something that people have thought about, and was that if you're the founder mode, you're very lonely. It's just you and the problem. But really, that's not what it means. It's finding the right people, like you said. I find other founders, I find key technical people in these areas, not to be managers, but to be that almost running the race by your side. And now you're running together.
Exactly. I think I think within your organization, you find those people. I think in networks, that's actually the heart behind why we started the Hype Mob. And having that membership is so that founders can actually get a community of other faith founders who are doing exactly what they're doing with a different product, maybe in a different ecosystem, but they're like learning from each other. And that's what I love about it, is actually real friendships form. People are making real connections. They're visiting other countries to see their fellow Hype members and celebrating each other. And it is a beautiful community. It doesn't have to be lonely. I think it can be lonely if you want it to be. But it's not you against the world. God allows you to build a team.
And I think that's going to the potluck example. That is that, right?
Yes.
It really is. You're bringing all these ideas together, and now what you bring to the table, somebody else can kind of consume from, and then that can kind of
that blesses you, right?
You
know, the best thing is when your casserole dish is empty at the end of the potluck. There's nothing more depressing when yours is still full.
And everyone want to be the guy that brings vegetables and nobody eats it.
Why?
Yeah,
Why would you do that? Yeah. I mean, if you're a real good potlucker,
Yeah.
you're thinking, man, I'm bringing the best
Yes,
thing
yes.
that runs out first.
Yeah, that's got to be the mindset.
You've got to have that mindset. And yet, why don't we bring this to the church?
Yeah.
Or why don't we bring this to our
love that.
organization? Like,
No.
bring the best that gets eaten up first.
Yeah. If you want to progress, that's the best way to do it. If you want to be seen,
Yes.
that's the best way to do it. Don't complain. Don't get critical.
No.
Bring your best.
Yes.
It will always be seen.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's founder mode right there.
That is.
I call that owner mode.
Yeah. I like owner mode.
I like owner mode.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, a founder is the owner.
Yeah.
I mean, I know in a modern company, you've got many owners, you've got the board,
Right.
investors. But I think the to own the vision, nobody owns it more than the founder.
Yeah.
And so we're just scaling ownership from there. I think the manager is not that invested beyond their paycheck.
Yeah. I love it. I'm going to cap it there, actually.
Yeah.
It's been a great podcast. Thank you for kind
That was
of
fun.
going through the
One-on-one.
journey
We did a
one-on-one. This is actually one of the ones that I wanted to do for a while. Just an interview, kind of go through your story and stuff.
Yeah.
But I think it's very educational. Appreciate it.
I love it.
And next time we do a one-on-one, it's going to be all conspiracy theories. So.
We need a couple hours for that
Yeah,
one.
a couple hours. That one's going to be exclusive for hype members.
Are you going to
only.
let everyone know you got a little flippy
Oh,
phone
yeah,
now?
we got to talk about
Quickly,
it.
just
If you're
tell
on
them.
video, Google
Yep.
Pixel 9.
Look at this.
The Pixel 9 Pro Fold,
Wow.
phablet. Don't need an iPad anymore.
It's called a phablet?
I think
Oh,
it's
you
good.
call it a phablet?
I call it, but phone, tablet. I think it's going to be
Oh,
people. When I was
That's so gay. A phablet. That's a fabulous tablet, man. Come on. Are you really going to start waving that around?
Wait.
Phablet?
I think that's what. Yeah, phablet. I think that's what it's going to be
Oh
called.
my God. There's one reason not to buy it.
All right. Well, also PSA: if you're on iOS, go get iOS 18.
Oh, I did it.
You did it,
What
and
does
then
that
enable
empower us?
and then now enable RCS, and now your Android friends, your iOS
Stop
friends,
it.
we're all going to be friends. You're going to still see green bubbles. I don't know. Apple still wants you to hate them, but it's
I'm not going to
be
see duplicates of everything.
Yeah, no, the reactions are all going to be right. It's going to all look really good.
Wow.
Yeah.
Let's
The
go.
world is healing.
Well, but we're still going to be green. Just
Yeah,
so
we're
you
still
know.
going to be green, just so you know.
You're still the enemy.
Yeah. Apple's smart.
They
Apple's
are.
smart.
They are.
It was a great podcast. It was a good conversation. Cheers.
Bless you, buddy.